Hi, my name's Dave Price, and it's really nice to have Iain Strachan on the call today. Iain, how you doing, sir?
Hi, David. I'm very well indeed. Thank you.
Brilliant stuff. Great to have you on here. It's the first session we've actually been on here chatting together. So what would be really interesting from my perspective, before we go on to the action coaching that I know you're really involved with and
Yeah,
have been for 6 or 7 years, is just to get a bit of your background before action coach.
of course, of course. Quite a career, quite a varied career. I started out as an apprentice in Leeds, so worked in the real genuine dark satanic mill. It was a filthy, loud, and dangerous environment where I served my apprenticeship. We were making turbine blades using huge, great presses. Um, it was hot, it was noisy, it was dangerous. The one thing I learned in my apprenticeship very early on was how to communicate, and that the human condition is the same. I could have a conversation in the morning with a labourer pulling a cable through and have the same conversation with the managing director in the afternoon sat in their office. It was a really, really great ground for just getting grounded in terms of what people do and what people think and how people work. So I really enjoyed the apprenticeship in terms of not only building technical skill, but getting to understand how people work as well.
But and dealing with people on all levels by the sounds of things as well.
And that's the great thing about apprenticeships. You get to have conversations with absolutely anybody and everybody in an organization, right from the top to the bottom. So it teaches the ability to communicate with anybody at any levels. So today, I don't mind whether I walk into a conversation with a solopreneur who's about to set up, or whether I walk in and have a conversation with the board of a multinational. They all have very similar characteristics.
Mm. Yep, no, that makes total sense. So it was originally an engineering background then, and what happened after the engineering side?
So in engineering, I spent 25 years in the power industry. So designing, developing, building components and equipment that went on the power network, which was a great career. It took me all around Europe, and I finished up running UK operations in the UK for a Finnish engineering company. But at the same time, we started building businesses for ourselves. One of which was a daycare nursery, and that was really my training ground for meeting coaches and how coaching works. Because we really struggled with that business to turn it around. We really struggled to get the people in the business doing the right stuff to make that business work. And it was the intervention of a business coach that came along and said, okay, financially, I can see you know what you're doing. Commercially, you're on the ball. I can see that. But the people in the business are doing the wrong stuff at the wrong time. And we need to stop that.
But I must admit, when you say daycare nursery, engineering background, they don't automatically.
It's really interesting how much engineering permeates through any business that we're working with. We're always looking at systems. We're always looking at process. We're always looking at cause and effect. We're looking at how do we break down what's happening now into the component parts that make it do that. So an engineering background for a coach or for somebody in business, it's really, really powerful.
I've never heard it put like that, actually. But yeah, when you say it, it makes total sense. Yeah, systems, processes.
It's the curse of an engineer is that you look at everything and work out how does that work? And it doesn't matter whether it's a beautiful building or it's a beautiful painting or it's a business that wants to grow. We still look at it and go, how was that put together? How does that work? That's just the curse of being an engineer.
Right. So the daycare nursery, wasn't your nursery then. This was just going in there and helping the
Mm. Yeah,
team.
yeah, it was our family business, yes. It
Oh,
was a
right.
business. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yes, yes, yes. So started out doing out of school clubs. I've got to say, David, out of school clubs are so much fun. In out of school clubs at the time we were breaking new ground, and it was very much about how much fun can you have in the hour and a half you have these kids. You're not supposed to teach them anything. You're supposed to play with them. And the thing that I learned really, really quickly was that kids learn really quickly when they're playing. I mean, sitting behind a desk and they don't stand a cat in hell's chance of learning, but give them a game and by word, they will learn quickly. That was a really, really interesting time. We started out with the out school clubs and then we progressed in time through to the purchase for daycare nursery.
Right. Great stuff. So that must have been, it sounds like that was a real passion of yours, actually.
Yes, there's no doubt the future lies with our children, doesn't it? And if we give them a great grounding and a great start in life, then all's going to be well in the world. But it's also, it highlights so much about what happens in the workplace, and it highlights so much about how people work and show up. And getting the right people to show up in the business at the right time is critical, and never more so than when they're looking after our children.
Yep, very good point. It's weird. I hear you talking, and we could be talking about a daycare centre, or we could be talking about big corporates.
Exactly that. Exactly that. I ran a podcast recently, and the leader of he was a lawyer, quite a dry lawyer, and he ran the business, and he made the comment about, it's not about mental health in the workplace. It's about people being happy.
Mm.
And happiness comes from people knowing what success looks like in their role, how to achieve that success, and knowing that they've done it during a day. That's it. Just the same as kids want to know what the rules are. People in our business also want to know, what are the rules, what are the boundaries, and they'll be happy whilst ever those are clearly set and upheld. Really interesting learnings.
You just make it sound so easy and so simple.
It is so easy and so simple. That's the thing. It is so easy and so simple. If you get everybody understanding what success looks like in their day at work, they'll do that. They will just do that all day long, and they'll be happy. That's really why I came to coaching, is if we can make people happy in the workplace, we build a business that runs by itself. And that's where the value lives. That's what we're there to achieve. I don't know anybody that wants to build a business that they want to work in 24 hours a day because it needs their constant attention. They want to build a business that continues to grow and develop the things they want to continue to grow and develop without them actually having to do the day-to-day bit of that business.
Which is, I think, where a lot of individual startups fall into the problem. They end up doing that 18-hour days.
And not just startups, David. That's where I get absolutely astonished to find a £1 million, £5 million business where the business owner is still working 18-hour days because they haven't yet worked out how it is they get the people that are working for them to take that workload off them. And what I learned through taking the coach on and working through the businesses we had, what I learned was it's relatively simple to get the right people doing the right stuff in the business. Just follow a process. And when you follow the process, you get the right people doing the right stuff. Running a business gets a lot easier at that stage.
Mm. So presumably that's why you got into action coach then, to help people in this.
That's right. I made a decision to get into coaching. I made a decision that I could help a lot of businesses. It's a passion the altruistic bit is a passion for me. I love helping people. I always have loved helping people. So I spend a lot of time in corporate life. Helping people. So when I saw how I could help people by coaching, so going back into the engineering side of my life, there was a time when I was running the UK operations for a Finnish engineering company, and I would routinely get approached by somebody that wanted to set up a wholesale business in the UK. And I could see the same trajectory went off time and time again with the guys who'd come in as great experts in their field. They'd take a lot of stock into their business, they'd build a business, and they'd flare for a while. And then you see a slowdown in the business. And as their supplier, I could see that slowdown in they stopped responding to phone calls. They started paying invoices really slowly, then stopped paying invoices, and then completely disappeared off the face of the earth. And I could see this take place. I remember one particular guy called Nick, who came aboard, absolutely brilliant engineer, quite a young guy. He set his business up, and I spotted the symptoms. Started getting slow on phone calls, started getting slow on paying his invoices. And I went to visit him and said, Nick, what's going on? You know, we're seeing this slowdown here. Oh, yeah, business is a bit dry. And we walked into his warehouse, and there was £2 million worth of stock on the shelves. I remember going through, and we could count the boxes. There was £2 million worth of stock on the shelf. It's like, Nick, you're running short of money, sell the stock. Whatever it costs, sell the stock, get it moving. Anyway, 4 weeks later, Nick went under, the business went under, and I had to go visit Nick shortly after to go pick up my materials and sales equipment from his house. The devastation in the home was massive. Obviously, a struggling marriage, a young child in the house, mortgage wasn't getting paid, all the worst things going off. And I said to Nick at that stage, I said, Nick, why? You know, we had the conversation. You said you were going to sell the stock, and he looked at me and he said, that was your answer, Iain. You said sell the stock. I didn't want to sell the stock. Now, if you'd asked me what my route out of this was and where could I get some money and actually take me down that journey, I'd have probably understood, but I didn't understand at the time. And that was the moment for me when I realized that helping people isn't about giving advice. That's probably one of the worst things you can do is offer advice, offer my solution. My solution is not their solution. The great thing about coaching is I don't have to know the answer to the questions I ask. And that's what Action Coach has taught me through the years is I don't need to know the answers to the questions that I ask. I just need to ask enough good questions that people come up with the best answers for themselves. And that's what we do in Action Coach with a massive toolbox to support people through it.
That's the thing, because you can't be the expert in all these different industries that
Absolutely
you're
not.
coaching people in at all.
Absolutely. And for me, you know, the best client that comes along is an industry I've never been in before. If somebody comes to me from the electrical industry, I've got all sorts of preconceived ideas of how that industry should run. I'd much rather work with somebody in a fashion business. As you can tell, fashion isn't my thing, you know. I'd love to go along and find out about that because they would then go on a journey that would be completely unknown to both of us. And that's where we find the real gold.
Yep, makes sense. It's totally about you. Well, you talk a lot about people, but there's also the other aspects to it.
There is absolutely. I talk a lot about people. That's very true, and I do a lot of. But we have to back that up by having the right processes in place. We have to have the finances tied down for the business. So again, any business owner I start to have a conversation with, if they don't have a cash flow forecast in place, if they don't have budgets set for the business, if they don't have some idea how many leads they're going to generate and how well those leads convert into customers, and then what revenue they get from those customers, unless they've got an idea of what that's going to look like, then they will struggle to run a business. You have to have absolute clarity about how money flows through the business, because that's what takes the business down, is just losing money along the way, not understanding the irrelevance of a set of financial accounts at the end of a year compared to a set of management accounts, and how your management accounts relate to your bank account. It's really, really important to understand that very early on in the business, because there's numbers fly around, but the critical numbers are how much cash do you have right now in your business?
Very good points indeed. And that framework, as you say, applies from a florist to a set of solicitors to.
It absolutely does. It's absolutely business agnostic, completely business agnostic. Operates in the third sector as well as in business. We carry it through all sectors.
And presumably you must see a couple of repeating patterns in a lot of the businesses you engage with.
Yes. Lots of repeating patterns. If we were to move out of the usual recruiting in a hurry, getting the wrong people in the business, the usual repeating patterns are not understanding the finances of the business, not understanding. So going back to that engineering piece of, right, so there's cause and effect, there's process, there's nuts and bolts here. Not understanding that if we can dive down into the profitability of each small individual operation in the business and then drive the profitability in that one area, then we can drive up the wholesale profitability of a business. Not understanding that if we want to invoice somebody, then that invoice needs to be sent to the right person in a very, very timely fashion and be absolutely correct in order for us to get money into the business in a timely manner. And then checking we're actually getting that money into the business in a timely manner. All those things happen over and over again. And the fact that, you know, a business, within 24 hours, I'll send an invoice. Okay, what message does that send? If I get an invoice straight away, I'll pay it straight away. If I get an invoice after a small delay, I'll delay before I pay it.
Oh, I see what you mean, the psychology side of it, yes.
Absolutely, absolutely. So just being keen and making sure we get the cash in the business is really important. Because again, the thing that we see regularly with businesses is if we're not absolutely keen on keeping the cash flow running in the business will struggle. And as we look to grow a business, it will hemorrhage cash. It always hemorrhages cash to grow a business. So one of the first things we always do is look at how do we generate revenue in this business as fast and effectively and consistently as we possibly can.
I mean, that seems so basic. Are you actually invoicing out to the right person in a time?
And David, that's The frustrating thing about coaching is as soon as we hit gold in any business, in any coaching session, in any business, that hitting gold has two signature calls from the client. One is, I knew that, you weren't doing it, or that's really obvious. Wonder why we don't do that. Over and over again.
The flash of the blindingly obvious.
Exactly, a BFO. Yes, yes. Just
Oh, but even key fundamental things like that, you're seeing businesses just aren't staying on the ball.
I was talking last week with a £5 million business who had no cash flow forecast, who were determining how well they were going to survive based upon their bank account. They were not looking at management accounts. They didn't have a cash flow forecast. And when I shone a light on that particular issue in their business, they were just blown away. They could not believe how much clarity they got from just a 20-minute conversation around, right, if you could see this number, what would that mean? If you could see this number in your business, what would that mean? And the clarity and the vision that it brought to them and the excitement it brought to them was absolutely incredible. They were turning over 5 million. That is a huge business. I think about 5% of businesses in the UK are that size.
Right. And this wasn't down to a lack of intelligence. It was just not knowing where to shine the torch.
Exactly that. Exactly. It wasn't a lack of intelligence. There was a very, very successful business run by very, very keen and motivated individuals who just had been blind to that particular area of their business. And shining a light on that area and getting focus in that area will multiply their business and their abilities and make them a lot more resilient in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It makes total sense. Now that I can see is a relatively quick, easy wins are available on that side.
There's some quick. So again, with coaching, the interesting thing is there's some quick wins, there's quick realizations, shine a light, get some things in place. And then what we find is it's like peeling an onion. When you get the outer layer off, there's just another layer, and then another layer, and another layer, and another layer, which is the great thing about being an action coach is there's just a massive resource for us to dig in. So as we uncover one layer, oh, there's a quick fix, there's a light we've shone on a door, let's enter that door. And when we get in there, there's Pandora's box in front of us. So we carry on working through that. So maybe, in financial terms, we'll unpick the fact there isn't a cash flow forecast. But then when we get into the numbers, we find that we don't actually know how much it costs to have a guy on the road, to how much it costs to run a van, how much it costs, how much profit we make on a particular job or a particular component in a job, or how much it costs to have somebody spend 5 minutes on a phone call. And when we dig down to that granular detail, we can start compounding up those savings upon one another. And when you start compounding savings, then if you save 5% here and 5% here and 5% here, you don't just get like a 15%, you get 5% of 5% of 5%. And the eighth great wonder of the world is compound interest.
Yep.
So when we start to compound savings, then we get a massive, massive impact in the business.
Now, this makes total sense to me from a finance perspective, but you also mentioned about the wrong people being in the wrong place in a business.
Yes,
now,
yes.
To me, I'm like, oh, that's a lot more of a challenge, isn't it?
It is. It can be a challenge, and certainly the key to turning around many businesses, and the key we've used for turning around many businesses has been simply getting the right people in the right place, and that really does mean the business owners, the senior leadership team, working out what it is they want to achieve. So, what's their destination look like? What's this look like when it's finished? So many people go into business with the idea this is going to make them rich and famous, give them an easier lifestyle, without actually working out what it's going to look like when it's finished. And getting clarity around what it looks like when it's finished, that means what it's going to feel like when you're walking through the door of your business, what it's going to sound like when you're walking through the door of your business, what it's going to smell like when you walk through the door of your business, actually getting the reality of how it is when you walk through. And then what will that first conversation be like when you get into the business? And how will you see people acting and behaving? What will be the traits and the characteristics of your business that people know you for? When you dig down into what that culture is, what those core values are, what the business stands for, and then you recruit against those kind of core values. And it's a great process to recruit against a set of core values. If this happens in the world around you, how will you respond? And compare that to your core values. Get somebody that comes and makes the same decision set as you. You see, we all come through life with different sets of values. We're given our sets of values as we grow up. And by the age of 8 years old, we've kind of got our values set in life. And we don't tend to go back and review those unless we sit down with a coach or a life coach or a therapist to work out whether that works for us or not. If I'm working with somebody that has a different set of values to me, then when the photocopier explodes, they're going to have a different reaction to my reaction when the photocopier explodes. I want people who behave the same way that I behave, who think the same way, so that when I'm out of the business, when the photocopier explodes, they're going to do the same stuff that I would do. Not do something that looks like absolute, forgive me, stupid shit when the photocopier explodes. Okay? I don't want my managers running around the office screaming, shouting to every other member of staff and getting everybody upset at that stage. It's just, that's happened. We've got another one over there. Let's crack on with the day. So getting the right people doing the right things in the business is really, really important. And there's a process to doing that. And when we start getting the right people in a business, the wrong people, the dead would depart all by themselves. And the business starts to run by itself and self-regulate, which means that as business owners, we can step away and allow them to run the business. So the process of delegation, everybody says, oh, you should delegate more. You own the business, you should delegate more. You cannot delegate unless you have people who think, talk, and act the same way that you think, talk, and act. Otherwise, they'll keep doing stupid stuff. And that's why we have to go back in the business and sort it out again.
Yep, that makes sense. That future pacing that you do with clients, yes. In 5 years' time, how do you want the business to look and feel? Because I would have guessed a lot of people would do that before they got into the business, realizing where they want it to be. Or do you find it's not actually thought through to the same extent?
I find a lot of people set a business up because they're great at what they do. I know a great baker that set up a great business, but never contemplated the fact that in order to make a great bakery business, they're going to have to go through systemization, recruiting the right people, putting financial control in place. That stuff was not thought through. How to get the right people to work the same way that they worked in that business so they could step aside and then grow the multiple outlets that they wanted. You can't be in more than one place at once. So if you need to be there to do the management of the business, you can only run one business unless you work out how to make it something which you can replicate over and over again.
That's the thing. Being really skilled at baking the bread isn't enough.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It's really not. It's really not. It's a whole new skill set. And watching that moment of realization in a business owner is like, damn, I'm good at this, but I don't know anything about that at all. But the great thing is most business owners are intelligent enough to really, really want to take on board the great learning, the great reading, the great videos, the great podcasts that are out there, and just keep learning and growing. That's what makes us thrive in life. You know, we're most comfortable when we're just at the edge of our comfort zone and pushing ourselves a little bit further. That's when we get most satisfaction.
Yep, no, that makes total sense when you're really actually in flow like that as well.
Correct. Yes, in flow. Yeah.
So do you find, are there certain types of clients that you find easier to work with than others?
Yes. Sir Clive Woodward refers to rocks and sponges.
Oh, no, I haven't heard this.
Rocks and sponges. So the rocks are the impervious, the ones who won't absorb anything. Doesn't matter what you say, they're staying right where they are. They're not moving. Rocks are definite. We recognize them very quickly in the conversation. They have a very strong opinion and they're sticking by it. I look out for sponges in life because sponges will absorb anything around them. They will absorb all the great information, all the great learning. They'll take it on board. It becomes a part of them. So I look out for businesses who are open-minded, who are ambitious, wanting to grow. Those are the kind of people I want to work with. And you can see them. They have energy about them. They'll often claim to be somewhere on a spectrum because they have so much energy about them. And it shows up sometimes as being on a spectrum. It really is just energy they have. And I love working with those guys because you can just shine a light on a door in their mind and they will go and go and go and go until they've satisfied that itch and genuinely grown themselves and their business around them. And that's an amazing thing to be a part of.
Compared to the Stones, where I'm guessing those are the guys who already know everything.
They already know everything. There's nothing you can teach them. It doesn't matter how well you shine the light on the door for them. That's not a door they're going to walk through because that's not their place.
Have you found yourself where you've got caught up with Stones, shall we say, or do you actually just select against those types of individuals when you first meet them?
I actually select against those type of individuals when I first meet them. If I find somebody who's closed-minded, I have to admit I'm very impatient. I love making progress, but if I find I'm not making progress, I'm afraid I can be very, very abrupt. So either somebody's on board and we're making progress, or we're not on board. It's really, really simple, you know. Yeah, the Stones are there for my entertainment only. They're not actually for coaching.
That's it. If you've got someone with that Stone mentality, even though you might be able to see some amazing opportunities and what they could potentially do,
yeah, absolutely,
they're not going to implement anything.
No, absolutely. All you can do with the Stone is attempt to crack it once or twice, and if it ain't shifting, just leave it.
Just move on.
In my experience, they will come around in a period of time. So usually it's not that they're completely closed-minded, it's just that they're closed-minded right now. And the greatest example of that was COVID. I cannot tell you how many good Yorkshire businessmen I'd spoken to before COVID who came out with a line of, I've been doing this for 35 years, lad. There's no that can teach me. I've seen it all. And by the time COVID had finished, that was something new. They hadn't seen that before. And I could reach out to all those guys and help and support them through COVID to make sure that one way or another, they and their business were complete all the way through the crisis that followed.
Right. So that did actually garner some real changes in people and their perspectives.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Yes. COVID was a great time for people to stand back, reassess what they knew and what they believed to be true for the marketplace, and then come back into a whole new understanding of how to run a business and what circumstances might surround their business.
Yeah. And you said there with the sponges, a lot of people assume they're on some sort of spectrum. I've never heard anybody mention that before at all.
Really? It's certainly a number of my very, very fastest moving clients will definitely claim to be ADHD and possibly on some other spectra as well. So I would suggest the majority of my clients register one way or another as being ADHD, whatever that means.
Actually, I'm thinking about it. A couple of my most successful friends, actually. Yes, I'd probably describe, well.
Yeah. It shows up as a huge amount of energy. And the joy as a coach is to take that energy and then work out help them to work out what they need to stop doing. Because with that energy comes shiny object syndrome. And shiny object syndrome is, I'm doing this. That's a really good idea. I'm going to do this. Oh, that's a good idea. I'm going to go do that. And nothing gets completed. So my job as a coach is to distill out in great detail and with great passion what it is that they want to achieve in the next 12 weeks, in the next 12 months. And make sure that that's actually what they want to achieve. That takes them to where they want to be in terms of what the mission is for their business, where they want to be in the next 5 years and 10 years. Make sure we're moving in that direction and then passionately hold them to doing just that in the course of the next 12 weeks. And most of my coaching breaks down into 12-week cycles. So 12 weeks is long enough to achieve something significant, not so long that the whole world can generally change around you, but you can achieve something significant. And then at the end of the 12 weeks, reevaluate, how well did we do that? What do I want to do next? What were the great wins? Why were the great wins? Where do we go in the next 12 weeks to get you to the next step along the way? And with people that have that level of energy, 12 weeks is the right time, the right length of time for them to concentrate on one project and deliver it fully and comprehensively.
Right, because I presumed you'd just be coaching people for ad infinitum, really. But you break it down into the 12-week chunks.
I break it into 12-week chunks, absolutely. So some businesses we stay with almost ad infinitum. It's almost like I become a member of their board, become that embedded in the team. And with other businesses, sometimes I will just run for 3 months, literally come in, 3 months of hard intervention, shift around the sales process, for instance, shift around the financial process, shift around the recruitment process, and then leave them for a while. Let them get that bedded in, let the business grow up to that next level, and then we'll go back in for another 3 months and really, really power through it. So whatever is needed by the business is where we go. Because of my nature, I like the 3-month intervention. I like to power into a business for 3 months and really, really make a difference. And then let them bed that in for a little while before we come back into it.
So talk me through how it normally works with a standard client of yours.
With a standard client of mine, we start out, anybody that comes to a conversation with me as a coach to start out with, I will always run the first 2 weeks of coaching for free, where we have a really strong, almost critical assessment of where their business is. And I have a process to run through with businesses. So we get a really good view of where they've come from, what's in place now, and where they expect to be in the future. And then we can shine a light on areas where they wish to develop their business next. So it's never prescriptive. It's an audit process that gets them to a point where they can shine a light on the areas they want to work on. As soon as we get engaged, sorry, David.
I was going to say, so the first 2 weeks is really you getting to understand.
Yes. Yeah. First 2 weeks is me getting to understand, but it's also them getting to understand, right? This is the structure of a business that really works. And we spent 30 years in Action Coach working out the structure of a business that really works. And I'll take any business owner through that structure first and go, look, this is what it looks like. This is a business you can walk away from that will either generate you your income as you retire or that's valuable to the marketplace. Valuable in the marketplace means somebody wants to buy it and it has a multiple of its EBIT. That's valuable in the marketplace. So we can show you how to build that business, and we allow the business owner to score themselves against that matrix. So they go, there's the area to work on. They can choose their own areas to work on. When they then come on board for full-time coaching, the first thing we do is build a really clear vision. And we've got some great, simple visual tools to allow people to build a really clear vision of where their business wants to be in the next 5 years. Build absolute clarity to that so that their subconscious mind gets the idea of this is where we're moving to. This is where it looks like. And again, what comes after that is the planning.
That seems such a fundamental thing. Where do you actually want the business to go? How do you want it to be in 5 years' time?
Absolutely. And it saves so much time. It just saves so much time to actually decide where we're going to go before we set off. It saves so much time. You know, you wouldn't go out for a walk without working out where you're going to go first.
Good point indeed. Yeah.
If you want to go somewhere, you have to set out. The example from Alice in Wonderland, you know, when she gets to the signpost, she goes, which way do I want to go? Well, it depends where you want to arrive. Well, I don't know, but it doesn't matter which path you take. We do not want to be doing that. We want to be absolute clarity of where we're going. So we develop tools where we can start to build up ideas, progress. We can look at where we want to be in turnover, what we want to sell, what resources we need in place. And we can build it all up as a picture on one sheet of paper. And from that, get absolute clarity of what wants to go where. Those sessions are really impactful for the business owner. Those sessions will reduce have been seen to reduce even the most gruff of Yorkshiremen to tears when they work out what it is that they're about to build, why they've gone wrong so far, and where they want to go with it next.
Wow.
I love those sessions. So we spend some time building that, and that's a very short, it's actually half a day doing that work. But when we've got that in place, then we move to the 12-week plan. So this is what it looks like in 5 years' time. Break that down. Where does it need to be in a year's time? Break that down into just the next quarter. What is it we need to achieve in the next quarter? Because you see, we only get about an hour a day as a business owner. We only get about an hour a day that we can allocate to working on the business rather than in the business. And we call that the cocktail hour, the Cooter cocktail hour, kick up the arse cocktail hour. You've got to spend an hour every day working on your business in order to get to where it wants to be in 12 weeks' time, in 12 months' time. So making sure that hour is really, really focused on the right stuff is massively important, which is why we spend the time doing the overall planning for the time period, and then do the 12-week planning for what the action plan looks like.
Let's say it seems so fundamental, basic, understanding where you want the business to go. And I love the analogy you used. I was expecting you to come out with some Stephen Covey, start with the end in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, not that many people know Stephen Covey, but lots of people know Alice in Wonderland. So let's follow Alice in Wonderland.
I think it's a much better analogy as well. Yeah. You don't know where you want to go. It doesn't matter which way you go.
Exactly that. Exactly that. Yes. Yes.
So getting that clear picture of where the individual wants to take the business.
Yes.
They're breaking that down into then things they can achieve over shorter and shorter time periods.
Correct. Break it down into just 12 weekly actions. So every week we're going to get to this point. This is what we want to achieve in the course of the next week. And the coaching then really comes into its own because we have really granularity there. So it's really then, if that's, we need to market, we need to start build a marketing campaign. Week one is going to be doing some learning about marketing. And then we suddenly come up against someone going, well, I don't believe in marketing, or marketing doesn't work for these reasons, or marketing is just an expense, or whatever of the limiting beliefs they've got. So then we have to dive into the tools around the psychology of, right, so what is marketing about and why do you have that belief set? So at every stage, as we're moving towards completing a project, we've got to look, every business owner I know who isn't getting where they want to be is actually stood in their own way. There's a mental block up here. You know,
the psychology of this is really, really fascinating.
It's breaking down, taking that big vision, breaking it down to simple actions, and then working out what stands in their way to stop them taking those simple actions up until now. Getting those barriers out of the way, getting to make those simple actions on a weekly basis. Then that ramps up over the 12 weeks. Then that ramps up over the 12 months. Then that ramps up over the 5 years. The impact we make is massive, but we make it one little step at a time, just to make it as comfortable and as long-lasting as it possibly can be, because we're trying to change the way that people behave habitually, as opposed to the usual training course, often do all this stuff differently. And that doesn't work for anybody. We want to make endemic change that stays with business owners.
Because some of that, what you've just said there, the idea, oh, marketing doesn't work for me, or marketing doesn't work for this. How do you start around addressing those sorts of fixed beliefs? Because
the same way we go about any other limiting belief, there is a technique to go to take apart a limiting belief, and we can all do it. And we all have limiting beliefs. It's just noticing we've got them to start out with, and then looking for evidence to take that limiting belief to pieces, and then majoring on that evidence. And we all have it. The guy last week who said he was lousy at sales, guy who refused to pick the telephone up because he said he was lousy at sales, who absolutely loved problem solving and had one of the greatest products in the world for saving the planet, but felt he was lousy at sales. Take that limiting belief, I'm lousy at sales, and turn it into, I'm great at solving problems. And I actually have a product that's going to significantly improve the way this planet survives. We've got a compelling argument to pick the goddamn phone up and find a couple more clients that want that problem solving.
Just by reframing, by the sound of things, that
Sometimes reframing, sometimes seeking evidence to the contrary, sometimes speaking with friends, sometimes just reflecting on the belief sets that have been given to us through life.
I was going to say, yeah, fixed beliefs you've had from for years.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, people aren't even aware of consciously anymore at all.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep. No, that makes sense. And I think from your perspective, you must really enjoy it because I can see it as though you've got like a secret little key.
It's a massive privilege, David. It's a massive privilege for somebody to trust me enough to share some of those limiting beliefs, some of those challenges they've got. Sometimes it goes very deep, and sometimes it's just something completely inconsidered in their life. And then just be able to shine a light on that, just be able to bring a little bit more understanding to it, to liberate them a little bit more, just to show them to do the reframe so they get to understand it from a different perspective or to find evidence to the contrary. It's just a massively effective way of empowering people to be themselves. And yes, I enjoy that massively because there's like a kernel of somebody really, really nice in there that wants to come out. It just wants to come out, and as you say, I'm allowed the key to go. Right, here's, yeah, have a look at that. Have a look at that. Yeah, I like that. Let's do more of that then. Why have we stopped doing that? It
Mm.
really, really, really annoys me that sometime around about the age of 8 or 12, we lost our curiosity and our inquisitiveness, and we just assume we know stuff and do stuff the way we always have. If we can re-engage the curiosity, then we've got a lot more to offer the world.
Mm. It's a sort of percentage. How much of what you do you think is purely psychological rather than systems and finance and
It's almost a 50-50 because even when we're doing the finance, even then, we're still shining lights. We're still breaking down beliefs and barriers that have always been there. Just to actually get somebody to understand the value of a set of management accounts at the end of the month and understand the numbers that are in that set of management accounts will give them the facility to go away and ask questions that they would not have asked otherwise of themselves, of the business, and what goes on around them. So a massive amount of it is psychological, even though it's using the systems that you'd recognize around you. Just setting the dreaded KPIs in the business. Nobody wants to set KPIs in the business until you understand that if you set a KPI, you can make that employee really happy because they suddenly know that they're doing what's wanted of them in the business. How massive is that? This isn't a KPI to berate somebody with. This is somebody's measurement of how happy they are. Why are we not doing more of that? Now, tell me whether that's a metric, whether that's a system, or tell me whether that's a psychological tool. I don't know.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, it's all intertwined, isn't it?
It is absolutely intertwined. It is absolutely intertwined. Yes, yes. And once somebody knows what success looks like in the role, they're going to do more of that. They're definitely going to do more of that.
Yep. Yep, makes total sense. So I was wondering, do you find people have sort of limited beliefs or pre-agreed beliefs about the role as a coach that are completely opposite to your view?
I struggle even to this day, 6.5 years in with Action Coach, and I was doing some coaching before that as well. I struggle to understand what people think a coach really is. And I probably struggle myself sometimes to work out what a coach really is because it's not a consultant. It's definitely not consultancy, but I have to know a lot about a lot of things in order to be able to frame a conversation. So there probably is a lot of confusion around what a coach actually is because the role is so varied. I have no idea what's going to show up in the next coaching session. I do my best to get a focus sheet from my clients first. So I've got some idea of how well they've done the last week with their challenges, what challenges they've had along the way, what successes and wins they've had. But I still have no idea who's going to show up in actual fact in the meeting, whether they've had a really poor morning, whether the dog died, whether the budgie died this morning, or whether they woke up, the sun was shining and they had a 15-mile run and they feel amazing. I don't know who's going to show up at that moment.
It's a good point. I suppose personal issues will come into this as well that are completely outside of the business.
We have a session at the beginning of every coaching session. Every coaching session I run, I start out with something that they call the whiffle. What I feel like expressing. Have a whiffle first. And we like to head up every meeting in the organization, have a whiffle first. It gets people in the room. But what I feel like expressing is, if the cat died this morning, I'd like to know the cat died this morning, because you're likely to burst into tears halfway through the meeting.
Mm-hmm.
If you've been out for a 15-mile run in the sunshine this morning, you're probably going to come in bursting with energy. And I'll want to channel that into something really, really constructive in the business. So we need to know who turns up and why.
So just to actually understand the headspace at the beginning of every single meeting.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Now imagine doing that in the entire business.
Yes, that's what's just going through my mind, actually. Yeah.
It's so powerful, so powerful. The shares that you get, the bond that you get between everybody in the business by doing that at the head of a meeting, it's really incredible.
Good. Yeah. Yeah, because otherwise stuff is going to be going on that you're not aware of that is going to impact, how people actually turn up.
Yeah. Absolutely that. Absolutely. So we need to understand this stuff. Interesting how we always assume people will just turn up as, who they're supposed to be, who our preconception says they will be. But if we think about it, that's not what happens in real life. We all come in with our own baggage.
We've all got stuff going on. Yes.
You're right. Too right. We all have stuff going on. How do we handle that in the meeting? How do we recognize that when we first meet with somebody?
So it's just thinking in, that idea of just the whiffle, as you put it.
The whiffle, yeah, what I feel like expressing, massively powerful tool.
Yeah, and to do that with your team members as well.
Yeah,
I can see that being really useful.
Absolutely. Just one of the tools that comes as soon as you join Action Coach, you start learning these things and think that's a really powerful tool to have. Really, really useful toolbox that at any moment, there's something in that toolbox that I can dip in, which goes back to the engineer thing. I always had a toolbox as an engineer, and I've still got one as an engineer who's now a coach. It's just, I've not found the bottom of this goddamn toolbox yet.
So I'm intrigued with the standard journey of a client. How do they normally even first get to hear about you?
How do clients get to hear about me? They've got to hear about me through success stories of businesses that they've seen, business owners they know. They'll get to meet me at networking meetings. They'll see me at presentations. They'll see me. I've got a presentation running on the 30th of April where we spend 3 hours going through those fundamentals of building a business. So business owners will see that, or they'll see me on Facebook or see me on LinkedIn. So it's about, there's so much stuff that we have in Action Coach. We need to shout about it as much as we can to let people know there's resource out there like nothing else you've seen before.
Right. So if I'm talking to a friend who's used you as a coach, like, I really need to talk to Iain. This session that you mentioned on the 30th of April, is this for a completely new client? Potentially.
Yes. It's going to be existing clients and potentially new clients. It's anybody that has a business that at some point is going to either want to leave that business or sell that business, which I think is just about everybody that has a business.
At some point, you're going to want to leave or sell. Yeah.
Correct. So it's for anybody with a business. I guarantee that anybody that comes along to that meeting will take away 3 things that will change the way they run their business for the better going forward. And normally, I don't know anybody that can take away more than 3 things and action them. I guarantee 3 things at least will come out of that meeting. And everybody gets their own workbook. And there'll be pies as well. So pretty much, I think I've covered all the bases there.
I love the fact that pie is there as well. So for anybody who's potentially interested in coaching, then that's really the first step to find out a bit more about it then.
And not even coaching, for anybody that's interested in a fun and engaging way of growing their business. So the reason that I didn't become a consultant was because I don't want to take my solution and graft it on somebody else, which is what consultants do. Take their solution and graft it onto somebody else. I rarely see that work because Everybody thinks, acts, and behaves in a different manner. They need a solution which is their solution, not somebody else's solution grafted on. So it's not so much about coaching. This is much more about, if you want to grow a business of your own, which is successful, resilient, makes a profit, and gives you a life, then this meeting will take you through what it is that you need to consider for yourself in order to get a business to do that. So it's not about coaching at all. It's really about, that meeting on the 30th is really about what it is you need to go do for yourself to grow a business.
Right. So this isn't, it's not even a veiled coaching sales day. It's more actually just understanding what
it's more understanding. I guarantee that my method of teaching in that session is coaching. I guarantee they will be coached throughout that session. But that's because that is the most effective delivery method I know to get across to people the fundamental 6 steps on how to grow a business. There's 6 fundamental steps to growing a business. And the best way I know of taking people through those is to get them to live them in terms of their own business. And that, I'm afraid, is what we refer to these days as coaching.
The 6 fundamental steps. I'm not going to ask you what they are on this call at all. But this is going out on social media. Let's give it a plug. So this is on the 30th of April.
On the 30th of April, the 6 steps to growing a business that runs with or without you. It's really, really simple. 6 steps. And basically, most businesses run through the first 3 or 4 steps. And by that stage, they've got pretty much everything they need. Beyond that, it's about entrepreneurship and growing multiple businesses, not just the one. So the first 3 or 4 steps are about growing your first business. And then the final few steps are about how do we multiply that up. And these are absolutely approachable by anybody. And we'll run through those 6 steps on the 30th of April. Everybody takes away their own workbook, which is basically their own action plan to put in action when they leave the meeting. Whether they do that in conjunction with me or somebody else, or whether they just go away and read some great books to do that, that's entirely up to them.
And whereabouts is it on the?
It's in the centre of Leeds. It's on Leeds Docks at the Horizon meeting venue.
Right. And what time is it?
It's 6:30 in the evening start. We should finish around about 9:30, and you'll probably find us in bar 212 shortly afterwards.
Love it. I must admit, I'm going to check my diary as soon as we finish on this call. Yeah,
perfect, David. That'd be amazing. Amazing to see you there. Absolutely amazing. And bring your friends.
Everything you said just makes so much sense to me.
Brilliant. I love that. So we should. If I was talking gobbledygook, then we wouldn't stand a chance, would we?
No,
perfect sense.
Come across as rocket science at all. It's like, oh,
exactly,
yeah.
David. That's why I joined Action Coach, because none of it is bloody rocket science. It's all perfectly obvious stuff. It just needs packaging in such a way that it's really, really approachable, and we can go through it step by step by step.
Oh,
that's the power of it.
Ooh. Brilliant. No, if I'm free on the 30th of April, I shall definitely see you there, sir.
Perfect. I'll look forward to seeing you there. I'll get a pie in for you specially, David.
Brilliant. Well, that'd be great to have you on here, Iain.
Very much indeed. Likewise.
Get more of a background of you and the action coach model. Yeah, and then till next time, we shall chat again.
Spot on. Thank you very much indeed. Love to chat with you, David. Cheers for now.
And you. Cheers.